This episode goes out to Connor in Olympia, Washington.
Hey there, Meghan Robinson here. Welcome back to the Nightblade Epic podcast. We hope you're enjoying the show so far. If you are, we want to remind you that reviews are a great way to share your love. We love love, and getting others to love our loving of love is lovely. Next up, Emerald City Comic Con is this Thursday in Seattle, Washington. We'll be at booth 2222, and we want to meet you. If you can come by, that would be awesome. For those of you in the Seattle area who can't make it to the con, we're doing a special meet and greet on Thursday night from 8 to 9 p.m. It'll be at the Starbucks Reserve on First Avenue. We don't really know what a Starbucks Reserve is, but it sounds cool. The exact address is 1305 First Avenue. Okay, now it's time for today's episode. Today, you're getting chapters 10 and 11 of Nightblade, as Lauren continues her journey in the merchant caravan. Enjoy!
Nightblade, Chapter 10. After they ate, Lauren tried to find a place to sleep, but it felt strange to lie in firelight surrounded by strange guards with long blades. After a time, she rose and took herself beyond the line of wagons. Then her head rested easily upon the ground, and she soon fell asleep. The next morning dawned bright and early, and Lauren woke before most in the camp. She felt no surprise to see Gregor had risen earlier still, and as soon as she stood, his gaze snapped to her. She gave him a little wave. He did not so much as blink. The caravan seemed to take an eternity to get moving, and Lauren nearly screamed from impatience, but eventually the drivers mounted their seats and spurred the horses south. Lauren had grown somewhat bored with the countryside, so she spent her time inspecting the caravan instead. The 2 carriages led the way, followed by a dozen wagons of varying sizes. The 2 biggest wagons had 8 wheels each and were nearly as wide as the road. Lauren let her course run back and forth across the column, peering into the backs of the wagons. She wondered how many of them hid packages swaddled in brown cloth. What could be so valuable that Damaris would hide it from the constables? Something outside the king's law, no doubt, but Lauren had no faintest idea of what that could be. Annis tried walking with her, but she soon tired. "I do not know how you do this for hours and hours," she said, cheeks puffing in and out with each breath. "I can scarcely keep pace with the wagons. The drivers hardly touch their reins." "The horses seem not to need it," said Annis. Soon she abandoned Lauren and retired to her carriage. After some hours had passed, Damaris emerged and mounted a horse that Gregor brought to her. She rode beside the caravan, sometimes spurring to a gallop and ranging ahead at the edge of eyesight, sometimes content to walk her mount beside the wagons. Wherever she went, Gregor came close behind on his own steed. Lauren watched with interest. After some time, Damaris turned her horse towards Lauren. She reined in a few feet away, while Gregor sat just behind her, his eyes never leaving Lauren's face. "You seem quite interested in our horses," said Damaris. Lauren flushed. "Where I come from, no one owns a steed for riding, but only plow horses and the like. I've seen riders only rarely, though I always dreamed of owning a horse of my own." "Would you like to ride?" said Damaris. For a moment, Lauren could not speak. I'm afraid I would only embarrass myself. I have never sat a saddle." "It is not so hard, and you wear the right clothing for it. You need not ride side saddle as I do." Damaris slid from the horse's back and drew its reins into one hand as she approached. You do not look—" Lauren's heart raced as the horse neared. It stared at her with wide and gentle eyes like great pools of black water. "Come," said Damaris. "He is gentle, I promise. Give me your bow." Lauren unslung the bow from her back and handed it over, never taking her eyes from the horse. "Raise your foot." Lauren obeyed without thinking. Damaris seized her boot and placed it in the stirrup before moving Lauren's hand to the saddle horn. "Now, step up. Imagine you are climbing a rock. The horse will remain as steady as that." Lauren took a deep breath and pushed. She swung her leg up and over, and before she knew it, she had gained the saddle. She sat there for a moment, both hands wrapped around the pommel, too terrified to budge. "Your other foot," said Damaris. Lauren looked down. Her right boot hung loose. Flushing, she placed it in the stirrup. "Thank you," she said in a small voice. "Come now, I will walk with you." Damaris tugged on the reins and walked forwards. Lauren did not anticipate the sudden motion and nearly pitched backwards, but somehow she kept her balance. The saddle bounced uncomfortably against her rear. She feared that if the horse increased its pace even a little, it would send her flying. And yet, she rode. She was sitting a horse for the first time in her life. "You sit too high and try too hard for balance," said Damaris. "Bend your back somewhat to lower your weight and cling tighter with your thighs. Do not fear to hold the horse's neck. It will not mind unless you tug too hard on the mane." Damaris pushed Lauren's leg to demonstrate and then hunched her own body lower to show her how to sit. Lauren tried it and felt the saddle's impacts lessen. Unbidden, a grin spread across her face. "It is so gentle. I thought it would be harder." "Well, you are only walking, after all." A smile had crept into Damaris's words. "Travel at this speed grants little benefit other than freedom from your burdens." They walked that way for a while, Gregor close to Lauren's right, Damaris walking to her left. With every passing moment, she felt more comfortable with the rolling motion of the horse's back. But after a time, she felt a soreness creeping up her legs, the muscles growing tense and knotted. Her bottom felt bruised. "I thank you greatly, my lady," said Lauren earnestly, "but mayhap I shall walk again. If I stay here too long, I fear I will lose the use of my legs." Damaris chuckled. "You take to horseback easily, but you might be right. It is not wise to overexert oneself on the first day, but before you dismount, you must try trotting. Gregor?" The man rode up, and Damaris passed him the reins over the horse's neck. He seized them in one hand. Lauren's stomach did a somersault. "Remember, balance yourself with the horse's neck." Damaris stepped away and gave the horse's haunch a gentle slap. The horse broke into a trot, but to Lauren it seemed the earth buckled beneath her. She wrapped her legs around the horse's belly and bent over its back, gripping its coat as hard as she could with both hands. Somehow she stayed on, but the saddle horn slammed into her stomach until she cried out with the pain. Gregor tugged the reins, and both horses came to a swift stop. Lauren shook for a moment, unable to move. Finally, she pulled her right foot from the stirrup and swung it over. At the last moment, her left boot caught in its stirrup, and she fell over backwards to the ground. She felt her face grow beet red. Damaris approached, holding out Lauren's bow. "A fair effort for your first time. Do not be discouraged. No one learns to ride well in an hour, or even a day." Thank you again, my lady," said Lauren. "You are too kind, but I think I will walk by the wagons now." Damaris smiled and remounted. "Very well. If you are still with us tomorrow, we will try again." Terrified as she might have been, riding a horse had been a lifelong dream come true. Even as she winced at her aching legs, she envied Damaris as the merchant cantered away. Midday came, and the caravan halted for lunch. They moved so slowly that Lauren would have preferred to eat on the road, but of course such was not her place to suggest. Annis disembarked from her carriage and came to eat with her again. Lauren did not enjoy the thought of hunting with her body so sore, and so she gratefully accepted Annis's offer of food. "You looked so funny on the horse," said Annis. "I fared much worse than you on my first day, but then I was much younger." "I hope to do it again," said Lauren. "I have always wanted a horse of my own." "To roam the land as a wealthy thief," said Annis, a light growing in her eyes. "Riding from town to town with a bag of gold on your back. It sounds glorious." Lauren looked at Annis askance. "I recall speaking no such words. Some might call that a foolish wish, and few would see glory in it." "Oh, come now," said Annis, leaning in close and dropping her voice to a murmur. "You cannot fool me, after all that talk of Meghan last night. That is your wish, is it not? To become a great righter of wrongs? I could see the light in your eyes when you spoke of it." Lauren swallowed hard and focused on her food. Fool, she thought. She had been too free with her words, and Annis seemed less starry-eyed than Lauren had thought. "I desire no such thing. I think Meghan used his skills honorably, but only an idiot would seek to win her fortune through thievery." "Or speak so openly about it if she did," said Annis with a wink. The girl was not half so silly as she seemed, for all her prudishness. "You thought little before you spoke, and you should guard your tongue more closely. But I am not fooled by your naysaying now, and I may be able to help with your first conquest." Annis reached into a fold in her cloak and withdrew a small leather purse. She tossed it gently in her hand, and Lauren heard the clink of coin. "What is that?" hissed Lauren. She looked up, frantically scanning for Gregor or one of his guards, but she could not see him, nor did any guard give her a second glance. "A purse. The first in a long, fruitful career for the Nine Lands' next great thief." She thrust it towards Lauren with outstretched hands. Lauren snatched the purse and threw it back. The bag slammed into Annis's chest, making her wince. "Are you mad? I am your mother's guest. What would any honorable person think of me if I stole from her? And as for you, what daughter steals from her own mother?" Annis's nostrils flared. "And you took nothing from your parents when you ran away from home, did you?" Lauren balked, unable to think of a reply. "I thought as much," said Annis. "It is a fine thief who calls another thief dishonorable. This purse is a tiny thing, one from a chest of many. No one would notice it had gone, least of all Mother. How do you think you will make your way upon the road without even a penny in your pocket? Your mother is kind and generous to me, and to you as well. What reason could you have to do this?" "Because," said Annis, her eyes flashing, "I wanted to come with you, but now I think I may not wish to travel beside one so stupid." The words might have stung, but Lauren's mind leaped far away in an instant. She saw herself beneath the boughs of the birchwood, Zane standing before her. "I want you to bring me with you." "That is what I feared," Zane had said. "No, I will not." How could she have been so foolish? Now she could see herself in Annis, too young by half, asking a favor she could not understand. But no, there was a difference. "My parents had turned my life to something scarcely worth living. Your mother tends to your every need and has raised you to be no fool besides. We are nothing alike." "We are more alike than you know," hissed Annis. "If I do not—" A shout cut her off. Both their heads snapped towards the sound. Near the front of the caravan, Lauren saw a bustle of sudden activity. "What is that?" she murmured. "An alarm," said Annis. "They have spotted someone on the road." They jumped to their feet and ran. It took them only a moment to reach the front of the caravan, where Damaris stood with Gregor looming beside her, blocking his lady from the road. "Mother, what is it?" cried Annis. Struck by a thought, Lauren looked for the purse of coins, but it had vanished. "Riders," said Damaris. "Several of them, and led by a constable." Lauren quailed. "Is it—" She could not finish. "One from yesterday? I cannot tell, but we should not take any chances. Lauren, come with me, quickly." Damaris hurried down the line of caravans. "You remember the compartment set in the floor of the wagons?" she said. "Yes," panted Lauren, breathless from fear. "I can hide there." "Not the same one. Here." Damaris stopped at the fourth wagon in the line. Lauren vaulted into the back, squinting as her eyes adjusted to the darkness. Now that she knew what to look for, she spotted the edges of the panel easily. Her fingers found the crack, and she heaved it upward. The compartment held no brown cloth packages, leaving her plenty of room to lie down. Grateful, she slid into the floor and pulled the panel back over herself. It took forever before she heard the hooves upon the road. They grew louder and louder before pulling to a stop nearby. "Who approaches?" Gregor's booming voice shook the wagon floor. "The king's servants, about his business!" Lauren did not recognize the voice as either Corin or Byrne. Yet they might still be here, she reminded herself. "The road seems fairly thick with constables," came Damaris's clear voice. "2 visited us only yesterday." "The same who sent us," came the new voice. "They seek a man and a girl, and said they saw the girl near your caravan." "They told us the same," said Damaris, "but we told them we had seen nothing." "I have heard the tale, but then I questioned them closely, for many merchants upon the road carry goods that give the king great displeasure. To hide them, such merchants might have panels and holes within their wagons. I asked my brother constables if they had searched for such concealment, and they said they had not. They sent me to see if such might be found." Lauren's throat went bone dry. Silence lingered outside the wagon. The man spoke again at last. What say you, my lady? Must my agents break your wagons apart, plank by plank? Damaris hesitated only a moment before answering. There is no need. The girl hides within that one. Come, and I will take you to her. Nightblade, Chapter 11. Surround the wagon! The constable's thin, wheedling voice rang out in the still air. Leave no gap for her to escape! Lauren feared she might vomit. If she had held any illusion of walking with Damaris outside the law, that dream had now gone. She must flee as fast as she could before the searchers could surround the wagon. She flung away the wooden panel that covered her. No one stood at the wagon's rear. She still had a chance. Just as she tensed to run, a cry of alarm sounded from outside the wagon. It was Damaris. She has fled, cried Damaris. Where did she go? Gregor? I know not, my lady, said the captain. My guard stood vigilant. Vigilant as sleeping bears, snapped Damaris. Find her, or it will go ill with all of you. Lauren stood rooted to the wagon's floor. No one stood near her wagon. What game did Damaris think to play? Lauren could not know, but she must place her faith in the merchant for the time being. Quick and quiet, she dropped back into the hidden space. Her fingers slid across the wood panel, and she winced as a splinter sank into her flesh. Silent as she could, she lowered it back into place. She was not a moment too soon. Within heartbeats, the wagon shook under heavy feet. A man climbed inside. Lauren heard shouts farther down the line. The agents of the King's Law had split up, searching the wagons in ones and twos. In a moment they would find Lauren, and then all would converge upon her. Whatever Damaris planned, Lauren hoped it would take place soon. The wood beneath her head shook with footsteps. Her breath came fast and ragged. The man grunted and heaved. The wood panel flew up to reveal her. Not the constable, but one of his riders. A gray mustache sat atop old, weathered lips, and deep lines creased his face from cheeks to eyes. Those eyes squinted at her for a moment and then widened. The man's chest erupted in a spray of blood, 12 inches of steel protruding from his breastbone. Lauren screamed. The man gurgled and sagged. His lifeblood sprayed forth, dousing Lauren's cloak. As he fell, she saw Gregor behind him. The giant's eyes shone cold and baleful, like the blue flame of an ancient king's funeral pyre. His boot lashed out, kicking the man towards the front of the wagon. Outside she could hear the sounds of ringing steel and terrified voices crying out in death. The wagon's canvas could not mute the screams. Lauren feared she would hear them as long as she lived. Lauren leaped up and threw off her cloak. Blood had soaked through it in places, and she could feel it pressing upon her skin. She stumbled past Gregor, who did not move a muscle. She lost her footing on the wagon's edge and crashed to the ground on her shoulder. Pain lanced through her chest. She scarcely noticed it as she rolled over onto her stomach and retched. The previous night's salted meat came up, thick and chunky and smelling of bile. She vomited until her stomach could give no more, and then she lay unmoving, except for her heaving chest. Lauren had seen death before. No one went forever without accidents. She had seen people crushed by falling oaks, or wasting away from infection after a wayward axe took a finger. But never had she seen a man murdered in cold blood, stabbed through the back. The sounds of death subsided. Gregor's guards had won before their foes knew a battle was afoot. A half-dozen corpses littered the ground. Soft footsteps drew Lauren's gaze upward. Damaris loomed. Her dark eyes found Lauren's green ones. Whose blood stains your tunic? Lauren looked down at herself and saw the crimson streaks. Why would... They were King's soldiers! Lauren tried to stand, but wobbly knees soon made her think better of it. Yes, and with noses far too keen. They would not have killed me. They only did their duty. Damaris's brow crinkled for a moment, and then she shook her head softly. Oh, simple child. You think too highly of your worth if you think I played this hand for you. You are an amusing companion, but I do not risk the law's wrath for amusement only. Lauren slowly gained her feet. Gregor appeared by his lady's side in the space of a blink. His blade lay bare and blood-soaked. Lauren swayed backwards to lean against the wagon. A quiet, persistent voice screamed in the back of her mind, growing ever louder. Soon she could make out the words. Menet, Nightblade, Menet, Nightblade, Menet, Nightblade, you fool. For what, then? Said Lauren. For your hidden panels and your packages of brown cloth? What do you judge worth these lives? The lives of people you did not know, who may leave widows or orphans behind. Damaris rolled her eyes. In that gesture, Lauren saw a wealth of dismissal, a wide ocean of scorn and embarrassment. The 9 lands make widows and orphans of us all in the end. The wretched and woeful are the rule, and joyous folk the exception. Not needlessly do we spill blood, I said, but I did not say we feared to or had not before. Lauren blanched. What of me, then? Do you mean to send me to the dark forest with them? Damaris shrugged. Why should I? Lauren did not know what madness seized her, but she needed to know the manner and meaning of what had happened. I have seen this. She gestured around at the corpses, though she was unable to look at them. How could you let me live, fearing that I might reveal today's deeds? Do you mean to? Rather than fear or anger, Damaris displayed only faint amusement. Lauren said nothing. Damaris nodded as if an answer had been given. Your wisdom is, again, a welcome surprise. If you think you could report this to the king's law and escape your own justice, you are sorely mistaken. These people died, in part, to keep my cargo safe. But, too, they died to protect you in your flight from the constables. You would face the block for that, and find your own way to the darkness below apace. None who walk shaded from the law may withstand its burning light. Lauren shuddered to hear the ghost of her own thoughts on the merchant's tongue. Now, come, Damaris continued. I tire of this argument and its lack of purpose. You will help rid the ground of this mess. Gregor will instruct you. Lauren's knees grew weak. Me? I could not. Oh, not alone, said Damaris. Gregor's guards will manage the bulk of it, but you will help and learn something of value. Who knows but that you will need to dispose of a mess or two yourself one day. You will find it no worthless skill. Words of denial leaped to Lauren's mind. Nightblade did not murder, nor would she. But those words died under Damaris's steely glare. Instead, Lauren bowed her head, and when Gregor summoned his guards and set them to drag the corpses off, Lauren walked beside them. She watched the lifeless heads bouncing against the ground. The constable's face pinched thin and reedy, reminding Lauren of a squirrel. A thin, pathetic mustache clung to his upper lip, and that lip sat drowned in blood, probably summoned by the man's dying coughs. His torso lay open, and slimy ropes trailed behind him in the dirt. The others wore simple clothes, no uniforms. One of Gregor's men, too, had been killed. The bodies numbered 8 in all. They were all dragged into the woods. Lauren felt grateful she did not have to help with that. But once safely ensconced in the trees, the giant's guards set about with shovels and made Lauren work as well. The summer sun soon brought on a stench, and she retched twice more before they finished. The bodies they covered with loose dirt and a blanket of leaves, but only after they had stripped the corpses of any coin. Other valuables they left in place. It seemed that the family Yeren held themselves higher than grave robbers, at least. Just before Lauren had covered the last corpse, the thin clipping of hoofbeats rang out through the tall trunks. She looked up to see Damaris atop her brown steed. Gregor went to her side and took the reins as his lady dismounted. Damaris made her way to Lauren. She had something under her arm. Come now, and try this on. I think you will find it your size. It will serve you well, and costs more than a forester's daughter might earn in a lifetime. She pulled out the thing beneath her arm and unfurled it. A black cloak fluttered in the afternoon breeze. Had Lauren not been bone-weary with grave-digging and soul-sick from the rotting bodies, she might have gone breathless. The cloak fairly shone with fine cloth, and it shimmered in the sun. Each fold caught a ray of light and absorbed it, never appearing brighter, but only growing darker. Its cowls stretched long, able to draw down almost to the wearer's chin. Lauren stood immobile. Damaris waited for a moment and then stepped forwards to drape the cloak around Lauren's shoulders. Coming around front again, she drew the cowl up. The cloak rested on Lauren's shoulders like a cloud, the cowl at once warm and pleasantly airy. She felt a light breeze kiss the back of her neck. Now I am cloaked in shadow, thought Lauren, like Menet, but with blood on my hands. There, said Damaris. It fits as though I had cut it for you myself, and you can hide that needle at your waist again. Lauren's cheeks filled with red, and her hand leaped to the dagger. She had forgotten it utterly. Just at the corner of her vision, Lauren saw Gregor. The captain looked poised to leap at a moment's notice, but she knew he would not be able to move fast enough. Lauren could draw the dagger and lay Damaris's throat open before Gregor could take his first step. But she would not. Nightblade does not murder. That was the only victory she could take from today, and she would not lose her grip upon it. Damaris relaxed. Her hand rose without warning, the backs of her fingers trailing against Lauren's cheek. Lauren looked into the merchant's eyes in wonder. Steel still showed there, it was true, but Lauren saw something else. A keen affection, a softening just around the pupils that spoke of concern. "Do you think I enjoyed what happened?" said Damaris. "You wrong me. One must do what one must. You will know this too if you spend much longer in this world. You will understand, and mayhap see me as wise instead of monstrous." If you spend much longer in this world, Lauren thought. She felt she might lose her gorge again, and pictured vomit splashing across Damaris's pretty leather boots. Damaris gave her a final gentle pat on the cheek. "Do not trouble yourself overmuch with this. Let it flow over and through you, occupying your thoughts as it must, and then let it run away." She turned and went back to her horse, mounting and riding off swiftly. Lauren turned to the men behind her. The graves lay filled and blanketed with leaves. She stared at the turned earth with a vacant stare, imagining the dead eyes that lay beneath it. She dropped her shovel and turned for the caravan. Her cloak of shadows rippled in her wake.
This has been a production of Legacy Books, written and narrated by Garrett Robinson. The music in this podcast was created by Will Musser. Check out his incredible work at willmusser.com. That's WILLMUSSER.com. Today's letter is R. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.